What's good, my madness society? It is your host with the most, Shadow Look, back at you with another video. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It is absolutely free. That is how you help my channel get into the algorithm. Highly appreciate if you go ahead and do that. And don't forget that we go live on this channel, roughly like around 5:30ish, around there, to discuss, many topics. Now we shall be covering today another serial killer. Like I said, serial killers have existed, in every part of the world, and a lot of them as well, right? Now, this little girl that you see in this picture was 11 years old, Now I know what you're thinking. From the picture, 11 years old, that's fucked up. Must have been, one of the victims, But it's not. That's actually your serial killer. Now I know what you're thinking. We probably couldn't get a picture of the actual serial killer, so we had to use the only one that we could find, which was one of them when they were young. But actually, no. This is the serial killer at the age that she was a serial killer, at 11 years old. She was 11 years old and a serial killer. She killed two children, but had multiple attempts on other children. You get what I mean? They just managed to survive, luckily. So, Mary Bells grew up in Newcastle, England. So, like I said, England. So, serial killers have existed throughout, not just in the United States or California, but like I said, they breed them everywhere. Now, you're probably thinking, like, 11 years old and a serial killer, like, that's fucking crazy. Like, how is this possible? Simple. When you have the right storm, you're able to breed some sick individuals, because she was a very disturbed child, very aggressive, very sadistic, very, she was very troubled. You know what I mean? As a matter of fact, the child that she killed, she would even go to the mother's house, knock and ask if he could come out and play, knowing that he's already dead, with a big old smile from ear to ear, and the mom would just tell her to get out of there and scream at her and shit like that, but she found joy in rubbing it in their faces that the kids were dead. And at the time, nobody suspected her. They just thought that she was a troubled girl who had a dark sense of humor, right? Who thought that shit was funny when it wasn't, right? But in reality, she was the killer who was rubbing it in their faces. She even left a note behind, right? You can find a note online. Can't even write, can't even spell. You know what I mean? You can tell that it was, left by a child. That's how the police knew to look for somebody young, or somebody who had a very, learning disability, because of the grammar and how it was written. It was either written by a child or somebody who just never went to school and shit like that, right? So she would leave a note behind, how she would go back to the bodies and do stuff to the bodies. And like I said, keep this in mind, she's 11 years old and while doing this. You get me? She would choke her classmates, trying to kill them, during class. When she would get mad, that she would just lash out and attack them by trying to choke them to death, and even screaming, why won't they die, or, die motherfuckers, and shit like that, right? Cursing and everything, attacking the teachers as well. So she was very troubled, she had, tried to push kids off of hills, she pushed one off of a building. She tricked him to going on to the roof and pushed him. He fell, 7 feet to the ground, but luckily he survived. And there was multiple attempts on other kids as well, right? Trying to attack them with razor blades, scissors. You get what I mean? So, they ended up finding out it was her. She was arrested. She was very, her vocabulary, obviously, she talked, like more of an adult, like more grown-up-ish for her age. Her household, now you're probably wondering, where her parents? Father not around, the mom was a prostitute. But the mom wasn't just an ordinary prostitute. She was a prostitute that was a specialist in masochism, which is somebody, for those who don't know, is somebody who likes to bring pain to others, right? Tie up her clients and whip them and, beat them, and that's how they got aroused. I know this world is full of a lot of people with weird ass, habits and kinks to them, right? So she was somebody who specialized in dishing out pain, right? And according to Mary Bells herself, she would let her clients, rape her and molest her for money. And now another person that lived at the household was her uncle, but her uncle didn't give a fuck about her, and as a matter of fact, her uncle molested her as well. So you can see that she had a very, very disturbed childhood, bro. Very fucked up childhood. Mom don't give a fuck. Uncle don't give a fuck. As a matter of fact, when they came to go get her at the house, police knocked on the door. Uncle was sitting down watching TV, drinking. Didn't even bother to get up. Told them, go get her. She's in the room, but you guys better get her dressed because he's not gonna get up and get nobody dressed and nothing like that. They didn't even go to the courts or to go see her trial in there. So she pretty much had nobody in her corner. She was alone. If anything, shit, jail was probably better for her than that house that she was living in. I'll tell you that much. It's just fucked up that it brought somebody, so troubled and disturbed. Because at an age of 11 years old, you're thinking that that's still a child that should be, playing around and you know what I mean, not fucking killing people and shit like that. But that was her fellow students, her classmates, her peers were scared of her. You know what I mean? She was skinny, short, but she was quite a handful. You know what I mean? Now, they ended up knowing that it was her because, all the other kids started coming forward and telling their stories about how she assaulted them and attacked them and shit like that. So that's how they ended up arresting her. But at 11 years old, but now that you hear her background of how she grew up and how her mom was and her uncle and everything like that, then you have a better idea of why she turned out the way she turned out. Can you blame her? Don't get me wrong. It's not excusing her behavior. It's not excusing, what she did and excusing all of that, right? But it's getting an understanding of, okay, now knowing this, you understand now why she, turned out the way she turned out. Being a parent is very important. Kids are supposed to be shown, affection, love, companionship, are supposed to be guided, and are supposed to be, listened to. And like I said, just knowing that their parents are there for them, not somebody who's supposed to be, the root of their pain, the root of their problems, the root of their darkest moments, the one that's actually, harming them, abusing them, it's cold shit because like I said, that type of treatment to a child could fuck anybody over. You know what I mean? It could brood the most darkest, sadistic people on this planet. You get what I'm saying? You could live in a nice area, in a wonderful neighborhood, in a big old house, but if they're being abused, then that's not going to stop the individual from displaying bad traits, bad, habits to them. You know what I mean? That's why I said killers could exist anywhere and in any social class, rich or poor, don't matter. But overall, that's just my thoughts. Have you heard of this case? There's many documentaries, books, and all that you can look up on her. And what are your thoughts on the comments? Go ahead and leave them and shout we out.